personal opinions. Like he talks about a man should prepare himself financially. He should prepare himself and maturity wise to get married. The timing and all of that, honoring your parents through all of that. And then he even talks about how to walk through a courtship with purity. Mm-hmm. Like he breaks down, like one thing right here says, girls can also take chances without realizing it by being alone with you too late at night or in another potentially compromising situation. A girl isn't trying to be seductive and may not even think about these things. You can protect both of you without being insulting or implying sin on her part by simply saying, you know what, let's go somewhere else. I don't want to be tempted and I want to treat you right. So he breaks down like practical things that a young man can do to walk through the whole courtship process in purity and not be insulting to anybody. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But then he also talks about it's important to view women as sisters. Like you wouldn't look at your sister in a perverted way. Well, I would hope not. But he talks about up until that point where you're entering a courtship to view all women as your sisters. So I thought that was a really cool way to end the book on how to victoriously do it right, you know?
Yeah, and that's the whole key too, is that purity during that courtship time, and thankfully a lot of us have that testimony and not a crazy one. So, yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to, you ready to move on to the next book?
Yep.
No Longer Little. Parenting Tweens with Grace and Hope. Yeah. Just pray you have boys. Not girls.
Got on late for us on that one. Yeah. So. 4 girls. So 2 boys.
Because girls are...
Man.
Y'all are crazy.
Serious.
That's all I can say.
Well, Cassie did tell me that she was afraid of having girls before. I was like, why? Let's say I thoroughly understand now. I love them, but I understand why. Yes.
Yeah. Girls are no fun. There's about a 3 or 4 year period.
Talking to your daughter.
Well, now
right
I'm your favorite.
So. Now that you've worked through all those hormonal issues for the most part, now you're Alex's problem.
Yep.
All right. Where do we want to go with this thing? I like when brains turn to mush.
Yeah.
I mean, the stories in there are hilarious.
Yeah, they are.
It's just... and it's so true. It's like, oh my goodness. All right, but that's jumping ahead here. All right.
So this book targets like what age group? Like puberty, like 8 or 9 till what? Like 13, 14?
Yep.
That weird, awkward stage. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because as I was reading this, like he describes one of his kids, nobody loves me. Nobody understands me. And I'm not kidding. As I was reading that, I could hear one of my kids in the background. Nobody loves me. Nobody understands me. I'm like, oh my God, help me. What do I do?
Quick, read. Keep reading.
Yeah,
keep reading.
That's literally, I'm like, I'm just going to block it out and keep reading.
That's hilarious.
Oh, man. Yep.
But yeah, all the hormonal body changes, all that stuff. As I was reading through parts of this, I'm like, I'm so glad I was never a middle school teacher. No way. There's no way. I'd have killed somebody. I'd be in jail. All right, what do you want to touch on this?
Well, it's another thing. As I was reading this, I have a lot of friends that have kids in this age group, and I was listening to them talk, and they're literally describing word for word what he goes through in this book. So he goes through, I mean, the physical changes, the emotional changes, why your kids at this age, you'll tell them to do something and they'll walk in the room and like completely forget what they're doing.
Yeah.
But he gives examples and he talks about how to deal with it gracefully. So actually I recommended this book and a few people bought it as I was reading it because it was really encouraging. But he has a little bit of a different perspective than I had. Like, he talks about understanding your kids, but not allowing them to, like, slide with disrespect. So they don't talk back to their parents. But in the same token, the parents really try to, understand where their kids are coming from and understand what frustrates them and still give them the tools to walk through the emotional roller coaster that's going on within them.
So this will, for you, I've still got, Trey's 5 and Aaron Matthews 3. So I still got a few years before I have to
do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right on the edge.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I have one
right
that's
there.
just tipping the edge right now. Yeah. It's nerve-wracking.
Just reading this book, just reading a couple parts and just understanding about just kids in general. I know my wife and I have been talking about this, kid of ours that is at that tip. And, I actually been applying, trying to understand her, and what's going on there. And, but also not allowing her to walk in that, so just being more understanding of what's going on with, with her and also in her, really helps me gain that perspective of just of coming alongside of her and basically helping her walk through this, stage of life, because I didn't know that before,
Yeah, and he talks about like the younger ages, you're kind of, you're disciplining your younger child for safety's sake so that they obey you and they obey God. But he explains at this older age, you're talking things out with them more and you're not discussing discipline in order to gain their permission, or what is that word? Assent. But rather, you're giving them an understanding and a reason to choose the right choice later.
Yeah.
So you're raising them to maturity, not just correcting their behavior. You're giving them an understanding and a foundation to move forward on.
Yeah, because I can tell you, having been in the Marine Corps and having 3 girls were way more scary than anything I faced in the Marine Corps. I mean, because as a dad, your biggest fear was, oh, please don't come home pregnant. I mean, it's like, oh, no. But thankfully, that didn't happen. All right. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, he has a whole chapter on media, gaming, and discernment. So he doesn't just talk about like puberty. He talks about all sorts of things that your kids are going to encounter as they get older. But I like his perspective on the internet and on media. Like, he talks about this is something that we can't avoid because their future jobs are most likely going to be computer-based, internet. You're going to need to learn how to use social media at some point. Mm-hmm. So he talks about the questions of a parent are along the lines of, when do I allow my child to kind of tap into these resources and how much is appropriate? And then he talks a lot about walking your kids through this. So he talks about they have public passwords and public, for the family. so that nothing's kept completely secret. And then as they're watching movies together, they often pause the movie and talk through, even if it's incorrect ideologies or whatever's going on, they'll pause it and they'll talk about it as a family. And then, they walk through even music they listen to. What's the message behind this music? What is the artist trying to make me understand? So they really use technology as a way to give their kids a biblical basis for interpreting what's coming through instead of just shielding them from it all. So I really liked that, and I liked the perspective that they had on that. And then also teaching your kids what is personal and private, like your street address and your phone number and things like that, but what's okay to put up on social media.
Yep. It's a different world than when I grew up, that's for sure.
Yeah, and gaming's like huge now.
Yeah, and I don't even, I don't, I mean, we had Mario when I was in my 20s, maybe. Pong before that, the Atari Pong and all that.
Yeah.
But man, once the controllers got beyond a joystick and two buttons, I can't. So I don't see what there's some cool games out there, but I don't understand the attraction to it. Now, my 5-year-old loves to watch people playing games on like YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all. It's like, no, you're not going to do that. That's ridiculous. So, but yeah, it's crazy. What was High School and Beyond, Chapter 12?
High School and Beyond. Well, you have to hit Chapter 10 first. Chapter 9 and 10, he talks about, how like the Jews do the bar mitzvah? I think you talked about this in one of your previous shows.
Yep.
Like the coming of age celebration.
Yep.
He touches on that, but he calls it a bat Shannon and a bar. I'm probably butchering that. But instead of like bar mitzvah means like of the law, daughter of the law, son of the law, he changes it to daughter of grace or son of grace. And so they throw their kids these big coming of age celebrations. And he kind of like walks you through all these different ideas on what you could do to do that. But he explains that it gives your child a sense of, okay, I'm no longer a little boy or a little girl. Like now I'm stepping into practicing for adulthood. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the next chapter, producers, not consumers. This is something my husband drills into my kids all the time. But he talks about giving them a good work ethic and a good perspective of, like nowadays you have people that, they make a living off like YouTube videos.
Right.
Because, me, Alyssa, Mariah, we make herbal tinctures and things like that, and we go do craft fairs, and people are shocked that we actually grew these herbs ourselves and put them and made these things ourselves. Like no one produces anything substantial with their own hands anymore.
Correct.
Like there's no skills, there's nothing, no trade workers. Yeah. So he touches on that, and it's important.
Yeah, because as a country we become a service industry. We manufacture very little anymore. It's just all service. Yep. Producers, not consumers. All right, and then the next big thing, High School and Beyond.
Yep, and that he talks just a lot about kind of identifying what your kids are interested in and what they're skilled in and kind of their natural giftings and how to point them in the right direction as far as do they go to college, do they, go to trade school, and kind of how to tailor, once they get out of that tween funk, I guess, according to this book, they get into this older, more mature age where they're kind of more driven and all that stuff that fell apart kind of comes back together, and you're able then to guide them to where they're hopefully going to be heading.
And is this one more towards homeschoolers then, or is this anyone?
Anyone.
Okay.
anyone. But I feel like this is a must read for someone